Hello, it's Dave Merch, the Spyguy. I apologize for it being a little weirdly off in here. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out, and I have the light over there, so it's making me look, a little darker. You know what? Let me go fix that. Yeah, now I'm a bit more brighter. Anyway, what? We're doing it live. Anyways, yeah, so I had a couple videos from Redacted that I just finished watching and was thinking of sharing with you guys. With my thoughts, one is kind of like generic European war stuff, and the second is an interesting thing about all these scientists dying around the world, which I find a little bit more interesting, and had some thoughts to share on that. And tomorrow we're going to try again to have our Friday morning panel with Wasserman and some other people, and David S. And hopefully we'll get into that one. So once again, I'll start off by sharing some of my videos here, share screen. And we'll start off with the Putin war one, which is kind of interesting, that I thought we could share here. So,
all right. Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin says the West is on a collision course with collapsed and is really on a suicide mission. Putin called European leaders piglets today. He didn't hold back. And he said they are on a course for collapse. And honestly, looking at what we've just seen them.
Yeah, all the West is on the collapse. I talk about this on an occasional basis. Every 250 years, Western civilization goes through some sort of weird collapse when we get kind of too fat and happy. And if nothing else, over the next 30 years, we're going to lose 3 billion people in a system that's all based on, our entire civilization is based on population growth and the next generation always being able to support the current generation. We're on the baby boomers are going to start dying, are already starting to die off. And we are going to see that giant transfer of wealth from that class to a much smaller Gen X, Zoomer, and millennials will be facing that movement of wealth from the old to the young. So, which has been, of course, been for the last 30 years, it has been the opposite. The young have been basically forced to support the old. And this has every last time this happened, it was the French Revolution. The time before that was the 30 Years' War. The time before that, it was the Black Death. So hopefully we don't go through as bad as war and civilizational collapse can be. I hope it's more maybe Napoleon trying to unite Europe or something than Black Death, because that one was pretty bad.
In the last 24 hours, it's hard to argue with him at all. It's actually madness what is happening right now. Over the past few hours alone, we've seen a series of developments that make one thing painfully clear. Western leaders are actively trying to manufacture consent for war with Russia that their own people absolutely do not want, of course, and they cannot afford, and they absolutely will lose. I mean, maybe that's the biggest part of the story. They'll be annihilated. But okay, go for it. Europe. Over the past few hours alone, we've seen a series of developments that are really troubling. Look at Germany this morning. That country is collapsing. Volkswagen closing its operations there in Germany after 88 years. I mean, the iconic German brand.
Volkswagen. Who's going to make your tanks if you don't have Volkswagen? Like, if your industrial plant leaves with all the skill and technology, how are you going to face the impending Russian hordes if you don't have the companies that made all the tanks that Germany used in World War II? Come on.
Because the economy, energy costs. Sorry, you're closing up shop. Western leaders aren't even trying to hide it anymore. Let's start in Washington. Nutbag neocon Lindsey Graham has just introduced a new bill in the U.S. Senate to officially label Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. Okay. So instead of labeling Ukraine a state sponsor of terror, which they are, verifiably so, the state of Ukraine literally pays and supports Azov terrorists to go to apartment complexes in Ukraine that they've identified, and they rape young girls and they shoot other people in the head. We have the receipts.
Look at that. Look at these numbers. The aggressive war has included civilians, including children. 2,047 Ukrainian children. That's terrible. But, Gaza, anyone? Or deported or displaced at least 19,546 Ukrainian children in the Russian Federation. No, they didn't. This was debunked very early on in the war. These are Ukrainians that ended up on the wrong side and have been placed in Russian orphanages. And then Melania Trump took up this issue, and the Russians called her up and said, hey, you want to help us repatriate these children back to Ukraine? We're more than happy to do it. So all this stuff is like, it's kidnapped, deported, or displaced Ukrainian children as young as a few months old to 17 years of age, according to reliable reports. No. What's reliable reports? We have the reliable reports. You got debunked. Russification. Most of these kids that were in the eastern provinces are actually Russians. Education camps. Yes, they're called schools. Yeah, the United Kingdom government of the Russian Federation seeks to accomplish Russification by exposing Ukrainian children to a curriculum that rewrites Russian and Ukrainian history, glorifies Russian military action, promotes allegiance to Russia, and in some cases involves military training. Yeah, they're called schools. I'm sure they are teaching them all that stuff from the Russian point of view, because Ukrainians want to use this as a propaganda tool against Russia, and frankly, no one cares. Ukraine has made efforts to repatriate these kidnapped and deported children, and presented a list of 339 names. 339 names, but I thought there was 20,000 of them. Wouldn't the parents be able to provide you with more names, or the relatives? These Ukrainians have big families. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. The Russian has increased acts of sabotage, assassination, and other kinetic actions. Yeah, it's called a war. That's not what you do in war.
So you want to label Russia a state sponsor of terror? Okay.
We're just throwing these words around now. There's terrorists inside the U.S. There's terrorists outside that. Like, everyone's a terrorist. Now that Nazi doesn't work anymore, now you're a terrorist.
Now we're okay to support this. Yeah.
Right. And the actual terrorists are not terrorists.
So understand what this means. This designation isn't symbolic. It's a legal trigger. And as legal experts, again, explain, who are much smarter than me, I mean, I'm kind of an idiot. They say that once you slap the label on a nuclear-armed superpower, then you're not creating space for negotiations. You're literally closing off every off-ramp. Sorry, they're a state sponsor of terror. We can't negotiate with terrorists. You're escalating sanctions, which they're planning to do. You're opening the door for direct...
Yeah, we already went through the mother of all sanctions. It doesn't seem to stop the Russians. It drove the Russians into the arms of the Chinese, and the greatest political disaster of the 21st century. You don't want Russia and China getting together to have parties. We wanted them separated.
Military confrontation and basically daring the situation to spiral completely out of control. And Lindsey Graham knows this, by the way. This is the same guy who's been openly calling for regime change in Moscow, joking about assassinating President Putin, joking about the best money he's ever spent is going to kill Russians. Best money we ever spent. Okay. And treating World War III like it's some kind of game that he plays with his gay friends in Washington, D.C. And this morning, Tucker Carlson kind of nailed it perfectly when he was asked by our friend Judge Knapp, about acting independently. And he said he's not acting independently. He's being used as a tool, used by the military industrial complex as a tool. He's being used by foreign interests as a tool, used by people who will benefit from chaos while ordinary Americans pay the price. Watch.
To label Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. How preposterous, absurd, counterproductive is that?
I mean, it's basically an effort to thwart the United States. It's self-harm. I think it's clearly intentional. I have always liked Lindsey Graham. I always will like Lindsey Graham because he's just so charming and funny. But I don't know. I can't tell.
Yeah, the sooner that Dans can get rid of Lindsey Graham out of the Senate, the sooner he can do his 10 Netflix comedy specials. I feel he owes the world because he is a really funny guy. And if he's out of the Senate, he can go become a professional stand-up comedian and give us the shows that we all desperately need.
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he doesn't know he's being used as an instrument of the destruction of the United States, but he is, whether he knows it or not.
Yeah,
and so of course,
right.
Geopolitically.
So he's right. So now let's talk about Britain because they are pushing the West to war faster than just about anyone else. Former UK Prime Minister and certifiable moron Boris Johnson is now openly calling for young British men and women to enlist so they can prepare to fight Russia. Watch.
Sir, Lance Corporal Johnson reporting for duty and responding to the appeal from General Sanders for a citizen army and encouraging young people across the country to think of the attractions, advantages of some kind of military training or service. Because at the moment they think it's either uncool or unethical, or perhaps they're not following General Sanders, they're following Colonel Sanders.
Truth be told, Colonel Sanders had more military experience than General Sanders, who was out there he's never been in any kind of military conflict, which is weird since you would think that given how long the Brits were in Afghanistan, you'd have some military experience. But this guy went out there wearing his freaking Jubilee medals like those were officially sanctioned stuff. Like, give me a break.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, who got paid $5 million for speeches by Raytheon, coincidentally, after he scuppered the Istanbul talks between Ukraine and Russia that were about to end the war? Just saying.
It's not funny. It's actually
He's hilarious.
Quite stupid.
Yeah, it's like
It's not a joke.
Anyway, think about how insane that is. I mean, this isn't 1940. Russia is not marching on London. They have no intention of attacking Britain or Europe. There are no Russian tanks heading for Paris.
You would think the British would be more concerned about their foreign invasion that is coming from France via all these refugees that they're taking into their country, so-called refugees, economic migrants, whatever you want to call them. That's much more of it. That's a real invasion that is being conducted in conjunction with the British government.
Or Berlin. Putin said we have no intention of doing anything of the sort, and he laughed about it last week. He said, you guys can't even stop rubber boats filled with illegals who come into your country to rape your women and children. You can't stop anything. So, okay. But yeah, we got to go to war with them. And just a few minutes ago, Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, saying the exact same thing. We need to mobilize, basically conscript, build up our army in order to face Russia. Watch.
Und wenn es uns nicht gelingt, die Zahlen, die wir brauchen für die Aufwuchsfähigkeit der Bundeswehr jetzt schnell zu erreichen, so wie wir es gemeinsam miteinander verabredet haben, dann werden wir nicht umhin kommen, auch über eine verpflichtende Dienstzeit bei der Bundeswehr zu sprechen. Wir versuchen es auf der Basis von Freiwilligkeit und Attraktivität. Das ist meine Meinung, dass wir das tun sollten, aber wir müssen die Option offen halten, es gegebenenfalls auch mit einer Wehrpflicht zu verbinden.
Yeah.
Compulsory.
So, compulsory.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conscription riots that will be hitting these countries. That'll be fun. These people will have no clue. They have spent decades emasculating their military forces, and they think they can just snap their fingers and create everything overnight. It takes years and years and years to form militaries, to have esprit de corps, to have military advantages. You can't just order it formed overnight. It doesn't work that way. You don't have the bench of officers to organize this stuff. It will take you 10 years to double your size of your army. Meanwhile, your own people hate their own country. And in Germany, 16% of people said they would fight for it. 16%. That's nothing.
That sounds like a draft.
That's
to me.
It's exactly what it is. Compulsory. So we're going to try to build up our ranks, voluntarily. But if we can't do that to face Russia, then we'll make it compulsory. This is Germany, by the way, what I just mentioned, Volkswagen closing down, energy crisis, a country that is in a recession, arguably heading to a depression. But okay, your biggest concern is Russia. How about taking care of the German people? There's an idea. That's a novel approach. So you guys have heard of the bearskin hoodie, right?
Skip ahead past their ad because I don't get the money. And it's one thing when I do it for another. Yeah. Not doing your ad read for you. Holy crap, that thing's going on forever. Oh my. Okay, there we go.
Sons and daughters, colleagues, veterans will all have a part to play, to build, to serve, and if necessary, to fight. And more families.
I was reading an article just yesterday from the BBC of all places, and they were talking about how in 2023, they cut down their own forces by 10,000 men. That's a year after the Ukraine war started. You're telling me you're so scared of the Russians that you decided to cut your own military forces after they invaded Ukraine. And now you're saying, oh, well, now we have to build them back up. Doesn't work that way, buddy.
Will know what sacrifice for our nation means. That's why it's so important that we do explain the changing threat and the need to stay ahead of it. As I've said, I'm clear that the country's first line of defense is the armed forces. We need to be ready to deter, fight, and win today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
The SDR
Can I just say that sounds a lot like putting the cart before the horse? He's saying they need to be ready to die and they don't understand why. So we need to make sure that they understand why they need to be ready to die. Historically speaking, when we hear these heroic stories about people who laid down their lives for the dream that was Rome, they know what they're doing. They have an idea. Right. They're saying, you're not on board yet. Listen to our propaganda and you will be. You'll be ready to lay down their life.
Well, as David Icke likes to point out, he talks about the idea of you got to create the problem, right? So you have to sell it to people.
Right.
So you need to create the problem first. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Like, Russia's the problem. Never mind the fact that he has said this new era of threat. What new era of threat? Like, where are they manufacturing this from?
Right.
So if you actually listen to Russia, do you think that Russia wants to take care of an island?
Yeah.
Of Brits? Like, really? Like, you think that that's what Russia's into? They want to invade and take over England?
Right.
I saw a poll on X yesterday, not really scientific, but they're like, will you die in World War III or will you be slaves to Putin? And it was like 80% of people were willing to be slaves to Putin because he actually gives a damn about his people, unlike the people running these European countries who care more about their stupid plans than their own people.
And they're not selling anything. Like, they're not coming out and saying this is the clear threat. This is the danger. This is what we see. It's all on like, trust us, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
Why it's all suppressed.
You need more than that.
And fight for what? It's not a free country. It's a country that hates most of their own citizens. What are they going to fight for? What is the dream here that they're offering so that your children can live free? Well, they don't. They don't now. So what would you fight for the UK for?
I guess in the UK, you get the right to have your daughters like raped in a park. Like that's what you're fighting for
The right
in the
to
UK?
be arrested for winking at a cop.
The right to be arrested for waving the
British flag.
the British flag. I mean, the right to
praying silently
at
The
an
right,
abortion
yeah,
clinic. Like
singing a Christian hymn in the street.
what the hell are you actually fighting for in the UK?
Yeah.
Biscuits, afternoon tea, which is okay. So that's actually kind of crappy, if you will.
Well, I will say, when I was first time in London, I saw the most British thing ever. It's the tea bus. You go on this bus, and they feed you tea and give you cucumber sandwiches. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So I guess people could be fighting for the tea bus.
We want to be honest with you.
It's like brown water. Why y'all do that?
Why y'all do that? So let all that
Ted
sink in.
Lasso.
I mean, Russia has not attacked the UK. Russia has not attacked NATO. The entire BS narrative, of course, is built on a lie, and Putin called that out directly this morning. Putin said Western leaders leading their country towards collapse over the false claim that Russia plans to attack Europe. Listen.
Хочу, чтобы меня услышали и простые граждане западных государств. Вас сейчас настойчиво пытаются убедить в том, что все ваши трудности – это результат каких-то враждебных действий России, что из вашего собственного кошелька надо оплатить борьбу с мифической русской угрозой. Все это ложь. А правда в том, что текущие проблемы, с которыми сталкиваются миллионы людей на Западе, стали результатом многолетних действий правящих элит их государств. Их ошибок, близорукости и амбиций. Эти элиты думают не о том, как улучшить жизнь своих граждан в западных странах. Они одержимы своими корыстными интересами и сверхприбылями.
That's like spot on.
Show me the lie.
Yeah, show me the lie.
Where is he wrong?
Where is the evidence that he's wrong at all? We've been hearing the same line for years from Putin, by the way. Russia, we've been hearing these stories, right, from European leaders, right? Russia's about to invade Europe. Russia won't stop at Ukraine. They're heading for Paris. Russia's coming for NATO. And none of that has happened, of course. What has happened is Western economies collapsing under sanctions that backfired, energy prices exploding, manufacturing leaving Europe, as I mentioned, Volkswagen closing down, an iconic German brand, working class families being crushed right now. Oh, and not to mention the birth gap problem. Families are dying out across Europe. Maybe that's why they're bringing in so many illegal immigrants. And America, the same thing. Big decline in birth. No one can afford kids. No one can afford to buy a house. So what Russia just announced today that no Western country would ever do, they announced this. Russia plans to pay off mortgages for all families with 4 children. Proposed legislation would forgive parts of the loan after each child, wiping it entirely clean after the 4th child, all in a push to lift the birth rate. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Have your entire mortgage wiped out because they want you to have a family. They want to promote a nuclear family.
Do you start making money after the 5th and 6th kid?
Yeah, you'll start.
Yeah.
It'll be like the Fed. They'll start just like printing money, sending it to your house. No, 4 kids, free mortgage. And of course, they've been doing this for years. And, it's actually been really successful. We've spoken to families who've actually lived there, know exactly what this is like and how successful this has been. And it's been really powerful. So if you have 4 or more kids, mortgage paid off. They'll reward you for it. Putin just announced this today. Could you imagine?
Hungary has something similar. I believe they give you, if you get up to 4 kids, you stop paying income taxes. Wow. It's like these pro-family policies must be nice. Instead, what we've done, we just brought in all these immigrants to drive up housing prices because that's what the boomers' primary asset is.
Imagine that happening anywhere in the West? No, because our politicians are more interested in telling families, hey, go kill your kids in a war than actually have more kids and we'll take care of your family.
Now, may I add to that?
Or kill your kids at the abortion facility. Or here in Canada, we have MAID, where we're killing old people.
Russia is not a debt baby.
And the destitute. If you're indigent, where you are living on the streets, we offer MAID to you. And then we harvest your organs. I got to get out of this fucking country.
Based economy because they don't have a global currency and they are dealing with sanctions. So they cannot borrow their way to doing a program like this. In the United States, if we were to do that, we could print the money, which would devalue the dollar. But because Russia doesn't have that luxury, they are not going to put themselves in debt for things like this for social services. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I find it very ironic that Americans are paying. So Ukraine can have health care, but they can't. Americans can't get free health care or taxpayer health care. And here's the other video I was going to talk about.
Well, why do so many scientists who discover or work on clean energy suddenly find themselves killed?
Yeah, a little bit more conspiratorial, but you know what? On the other hand, it's also very much more of a bit more fun topic, I guess, other than the fact, people are being killed.
Well, this is a strange story. Nunu Laero, he was until yesterday MIT's leading nuclear fusion scientist. His plasma research led to incredible clean energy breakthroughs, clean tech, no fossil fuels. He was murdered at his home on Monday. Here is the news report. Shot dead at 47 years old, Nunu Laero. Am I saying that right? The Portuguese?
Lareiro.
I know. I was practicing it all morning. Laero.
Lareiro.
Yeah, and I lived in Portugal for 5 years, and you'd think I'd be able to nail it. Anyway, he's from Lisbon originally. One could argue, like Tesla before his ultimate untimely death, that Nunu's plasma physics research could have changed the world. You could argue that. Sources have confirmed to Redacted that he had made a few energy giants very nervous.
Of course he did. I'm not surprised. Like, I looked at a little research into, like, why did the companies destroy the German wartime coal to oil creation process? Why has no one ever done those type of oil plants? Why has no one rebuilt them?
Turns out that he's not the first MIT fusion scientist to suddenly be murdered in his home. In 1989, Eugene Malov exposed a cold fusion cover-up by the Department of Energy and MIT itself. There he is. He even wrote a book about it called Fire from Ice, searching for the truth behind the cold fusion furor. Before he was murdered, he talked about how threatening this research was to the powers that be.
What we really had was a threat to the scientific establishment. The threat of it even being implied as real and having monies, shall we say, being diverted from their favored programs. And that was a threat. It was real. Overwhelmingly compelling, as I said, in Fire from Ice. It was real. Now it's 100% certain.
Interesting. Overwhelmingly real. Meanwhile, so coincidence? What did Nunu know? Andrew Goff is a former History Channel host, researcher, investigator. He's also the host of Conspiracy Hour on Unified TV, and he joins me now. Andrew, great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
It's great to be on the show. Thank you.
So
this is a very disturbing story, is it not?
It is. And when you think about the laundry list of individuals, I was speaking to a source today, said it's very, very sad because, look, there's a long list of individuals who've gotten very close to the sun, so to speak, where we might have free energy, and suddenly these people are murdered, or they disappear, or they're locked up and thrown in jail.
Yeah, this is one of those strange little facts in the world that people, the big conspiracies out there, sometimes, like, at least these conspiracies make sense. It's all about money. And I'm not too sure if any of this is true or not, but it's follow the money and you go strange places.
What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's just the latest in a long line of similar incidents, right? So anybody who has a cure for a disease, it could be cancer, it could be almost anything. It could be the individuals who find out how to power automobiles with water, not gasoline or petrol. They're murdered. They're suicided. They go missing. It's as though the establishment has a iron grip on.
There's a great episode of the Lone Gunman. It's one season and spinoff of the X-Files. And they have an episode where this guy knew that once time as a kid, saw this guy drive a car around that was powered by water. And the entire time they're trying to get the formula so they can use it to save the world. And they finally meet the oil executive guy who's running the car company guy who's trying to catch it. And he's like, no, we'll have so many, we'll be able to bulldoze the Amazon rainforest to build all the rubber for all these cars we will be making from this. We're going to have, everyone in the world is going to have a car. It'll be great. And we can wipe out the oil companies. And they're like, oh crap, maybe this thing isn't such a good idea after all.
On what is allowed to be used, such as free energy. I mean, Tesla was found dead in his apartment for no apparent reason. We're not taught about things like the ether. We're not taught about what Tesla discovered. We have to kind of go and research that on our own. So it's very disturbing that Nunu has been murdered. And the question is, what had he discovered? What was he about to announce? And when you think of the fact that he was responsible for MIT fusion and plasma division, that opens up the possibilities to not just free energy, but what's plasma? What is the energy that he's studying, and has to do with the sun, it has to do with the moon, it has to do with so many things that he could have been just about to reveal. And thus, there's a good motive for silencing him.
I've spoken to sources here on the show, members of the military, members of the U.S. military, whistleblowers, and others who've worked on the secret space program. My viewers know them well. We have a big interview that's coming out this week on that topic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that and getting more into this kind of conspiratorial world. I know I was talking originally about spies, and they're very well connected to this, but also just kind of discovering what else is going on. And so there you go.
Specifically, they've seen this plasma technology in action, at least specifically within the secret space program, within the confidential halls of the military, in a military capacity or otherwise. So a civilian, by all accounts, at MIT gets close to discovering or harnessing what we already know we have. And therein lies the conflict, no?
Absolutely. And it reminds me in a way of CERN, where the stated objective is XYZ, but really they're doing something completely different. I don't know if you can recall back in the...
Whenever someone says why the world is so screwed up, I say it started when we turned on the CERN reactor and we started jumping timelines. Because the world has seemed to go weirder and weirder as we come along into this stuff.
Day, maybe 15 years ago, when there was a reporter interviewing the director of CERN. And she was enthusiastically saying, you've spent billions on this facility, yet the world has people who are starving and homeless. Wouldn't this money have been better spent doing some good to society as opposed to smashing atoms? And the gentleman continues to defend what the purpose of CERN is all about, to find out how the universe began. This goes back and forth and back and forth, and she's agitating him to no end. And finally, he just blurts out, well, what price would you put on time travel? And she said, did you just say time travel?
What?
And so thus, that whole interview has been scrubbed. It's gone. And you have to wonder, was Nuno really about to come forward with something to do with free energy, or was it even more abstract than that?
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Too bad that it's scrubbed from the internet, but agitating and said, well, what price would you put on time travel? What? Time travel?
Maybe you could educate our audience a little bit if you can. I don't know if, from a scientific perspective, what would maybe some of like this plasma study and why this is so maybe important?
Well, plasma and fusion has so many different ramifications. Nuclear energy. It has to do with, I mean, there are those who believe strongly that the moon is plasma, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the moon, you've never seen the dark side of the moon because it doesn't rotate. There are those who believe that the moon is plasma and shows a snapshot of the known and unknown continents on Earth. And it's not 248,000 miles away. The sun, which Nuno was studying, is not 93 million miles away. What if he was about to reveal that the sun and the moon are within the snow globe of our Earth that we know as the firmament? There's no telling what it was that he had discovered or was about to reveal. And if it was going to be,
I'm only vaguely aware of some of these terms, so that's why I find it weird. So, but I wanted to show to people because there's a lot out there that people have like counterfactual thoughts or whatever, and saying like, "Oh no, what we believe in science is wrong." I'm like, okay.
Be a discovery about free energy. Well, that's not new news. Those who have investigated what Tesla was really up to have known about harnessing of the ether to create free energy. And there's whole schools of thought today about how in recent times, architecture of a world that remains in front of us, we see every day as we walk and drive to work, harness this free energy, but that has been deconstructed so that things like electricity providers and energy providers can profit.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's all about profit. And again, I don't know if you heard the top of this segment that I've heard from sources today who told me that he was getting too close to a couple of energy, should I say, he was agitating some energy companies with his work. So I'm not surprised. And when you talk about Tesla and you think about the etheric energy, here's a guy who literally found out how to harness just the energy in the atmosphere. And we spoke yesterday to Dr. Wai-Ping Yu. I did a deep dive interview with him yesterday about electricity as an effect. He's like, people don't understand that electricity is not like a thing that you pull from the atmosphere. It is literally an effect. When you rub magnets together, it creates electricity. Yeah. When you're creating this friction, it can create electricity. So he's like, it's so archaic if you think about it. But imagine like the power of magnetism, the power of plasma, the power of electromagnetism for, gravitic propulsion technology and all of these things that we know we have. We know these guys have this technology, but they're not letting us see it. So we have to still pay gas bills. We still have to fill up a gas tank, stop at Costco and get gas for cheaper because it's a little bit cheaper there. We pay electricity bills. It's so infuriating.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm not too sure. Sometimes I hear these things and then there's something else. So there's this guy in the 60s named Dean who claimed to create something called the Dean drive. Now, I know a guy who was working for Boeing, and this guy said his drive was able to do this like continuous motion machine. And like Boeing's like, well, hold on, you really say you got this? And he was one of two people, and one was a former retired Air Force general, and he was this is Dr. Jared Purnell, who's a very famous science fiction writer. And the two of them went down to Dean with basically a money order for $1 million from American Express. So that's how it used to be done back in the day. And Dean said he would only show them the demonstration if they gave him the check. And they're like, no, we're more than happy to give you this check, but we need to see it work first. So sometimes when I hear these things like that, where they're like wanting to, they're keeping it under wraps, the companies are keeping it under wraps. I'm like, I'm not too sure. There's plenty of companies that would be happy to exploit an alternate drive in the way that is described and to get out of it. Like I said with the lone gunman episode. The car companies didn't mind throwing the oil companies under the bus if it meant they could sell more cars, right? So you got to remember, this is all factions. One problem with the conspiracy world is that they get considered, they're all in on it and they're all working together. And it's like, no, one faction, yes, oil companies don't want to go away. But on the other hand, the car companies might want that technology, right? So you'll have to think about that. Or Boeing would be happy to have gravitational energy so they could fly their planes cheaper, right? These are things we all have to think about.
Well, again, anyone who's made a discovery like this, and many have made a discovery about free energy, he's not the first, he won't be the last, but they all sort of end up in the same dire circumstances. But those who have cures for cancer and other illnesses, nobody wants a cure. You know, what the world of big business wants, apparently, is us to continue to be unwell, because unwell equates to profitable.
Right.
We need pharmaceuticals. And this is just another example of that, and seems to be flying under the radar. It's not getting a lot of attention. Sure, it's on the news wires, but why he may have been murdered is not something you see in the mainstream media.
Well, and they still don't know who his killer is. The manhunt continues to try to find this individual. The manhunt continues to try to find the killer in the Brown University shootings as well. So I guess we'll have to wait and see who they find. I'm sure some sort of patsy will be put forth if they ever do find anybody for New News murder. It's really tragic and sad. One other story I wanted to get your take on, though, is about this story out of Greece. I found this fascinating as we've been looking, of course, at the history of the pyramids and all the recent discoveries over the past year beneath the pyramids, these large chambers and so forth. Well, comes this story out of Greece, this unbelievable find, an intact construction of a wall that is now 17,000 years older than the pyramids. Like, if you wrap your head around how long it takes to just pass a year.
Yeah, these things are coming up more and more regularly now that have the ground penetrating radar. We found the lost city of Z from that in South America and other places. A good science fiction writer talks about this stuff a lot is A.G. Riddle. I do recommend, I gave a recommendation from one of his books yesterday. He does a lot of good stuff in this. And there's another one. T.S. Falk has another series of similar stuff of ancient pre-human civilizations, is T.S. Falk. And creatures that predate us by long periods of time. Anyways, but yeah, it's starting to look like there was definitely a fairly advanced Stone Age, like probably up to Iron Age civilization that predates us. So some of the stuff with the pyramids is like, how did you do these things? And we've been trying to figure out how ancients could have done it. And it's starting to look like people did it much older than that. So we're not too sure. I'm not too sure if I believe they had we're lifting up using the ancient aliens did it or not. But it's starting to look more and more like modern Egyptology is a total joke. And all these people are going around who built careers on saying things are only like 3,000 or 4,000 years old is just bunk. We're finding stuff that's way older. There's stuff in Malta that's way older for sure. Stonehenge, we're finding remnants of some fairly advanced civilization that was probably destroyed in the flood, which explains a lot of these flood myths. So
to think 17,000 years older than the pyramids, with in many ways like advanced technology, that this wall would could actually provide heat, which is crazy to me. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about this. I just found this discovery to be fascinating.
Well, it is fascinating, and it's a part of Greece, central Greece, just a little bit to the north central. And it's famous, this cave is, the Theopetra Cave, for all sorts of discoveries, ancient Stone Age tools, things that nobody really wants to talk about, such as footprints of a child that conventional archaeology is dated to 135,000 years old. But that's too old for people to want to talk about or consider, because it just wreaks havoc on what conventional archaeology has created. And here we have this limestone wall created to keep the inhabitants warm from the wintry conditions. And it dates to 17,000 years older than the Great Pyramid or Stonehenge. And what I find really interesting about that is a discovery like this will make the news because it's close to the date of something that by consensus everyone agrees on. One example of a really old archaeological site that everyone agrees is the true age is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating to about 9, 10, 11,000 years old. It's very unusual that conventional archaeologists agree on that.
Yeah. The evidence is becoming stronger and stronger. So it does seem to be this one, like he said, 135,000 years old. Okay, that seems pretty strange. But the consensus, and I think a lot of these old guys who were like the guys who would laugh, the guy that Joe Rogan interviewed, they're dying off. And then people are coming up who are more open-minded to the idea that there's this pre-flood, pre-ice age civilization.
Site in Greece kind of sets the bar back further with the technology that this limestone wall could provide those who made it, thus showing some really advanced technique. But I get kind of upset when people talk about the pyramids being 5,000 years old or Stonehenge being 5,000 years old. We really don't know. What we do know is that there's conventional archaeologists, really well-schooled individuals who have found archaeological sites, either based upon the dating or the level in the ground, that go back 30,000, 70,000, 150, 500,000 years old. And these people lose their jobs. You're not allowed to talk about anything that's so substantially different than the conventional narrative. And that's one of the reasons
Graham Hancock got so slammed for it. He's gotten ridiculed for, because I guess archaeologists are like, well, now you're basically upending all of my schooling and all of my work by telling me that there's something tens of thousands of years older than what I say.
Yeah, and poor Graham is not really going to great lengths with his theory. All he's saying is that human civilization existed for the end of the last ice age, 10,500 BC. The age of the Sphinx has been dated to be twice as old as the conventional dating of the pyramids. So imagine what happens when you go much further than what Graham Hancock has done. You're absolutely targeted. I mean, there is famously a doctor in Peru who discovered a farmer who had found precious stones, slabs of stone with really valuable precious stones embedded in them that had pictures of humans and dinosaurs. And they're called the Inca stones. And everyone's like, well, that's ridiculous. But these stones are really, really valuable. So how could the farmer have, faked this? Now, the problem with discoveries like that, which if true, would just completely reset human perspective as to how old civilization is. In this particular case, the poor farmer saw the wealthy doctor paying good money for these stones, so he forged some other ones. and then the whole thing was thrown out with the bathwater, as it were. But I think in time, we'll find that things just keep getting older and older. And I'd like to think that there will be a discovery that kind of propels conventional archaeology to admit that civilization is much older than they've given it credit for.
Well, I think if we keep finding high-tech walls that are 17,000 years older than the pyramids, it could keep people warm by heating them. I mean, it's crazy to think about. I mean, think about people right now. We don't even have heated walls, for the most part. We've got insulation, right? But it's just kind of crazy. Andrew, I could talk about this all night, as I'm sure my audience knows, but I want to be respectful of your time there in the UK right now because it's late. So thank you for staying up with us and talking about it. We're going to keep an eye, though, on this story about Nunu, the MIT professor who was assassinated, and following this story. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it, Andrew. Where can people watch your show and learn more?
Well, the pleasure's mine. I have a show called The Conspiracy Hour on Unified TV. They have a special offer now for $1 a month. You can watch my show and many others. So I hope you can check it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Great to see you. Thanks so much.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. I felt that was a good thing to show and let people see what's going on and talk about that, and especially about these Ica stones, not Inca stones. And it's from a province in Peru, and I looked into it, but I'll have to maybe do something about that later. It's been about an hour now. I'm going to go out and get some things done around the place. But if you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and come on board. It'd be great to have more people here. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.